Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and in this video we'll be going through how to use the hypertrophy training templates. So the first tab we have here says Start Here, and on this tab we have an instructional video, which is a link to this video that you're watching right now, so that you can always refer back to this video if you need to. And the other thing is we have a step-by-step guide that you can go through in order to make sure you're using the product correctly. So we're going to follow this step-by-step guide and show you how to use this program. So the first step is to input the muscle group volumes. And that's the next tab here. If we click this tab, muscle group volumes, we have this table here. We have a list of the muscle groups that we're going to train, a recommended number of sets, which is the recommended number of sets per week that you should be doing for that muscle group. And then you select the number of sets that you want for that muscle group. So these recommendations are going to be slightly different depending on which day you've got, depending if you've got the 3-day, 4-day, or 6-day. This template here is the 4-day program, and it has the following recommendations for the number of sets. So for example, for chest, it's recommended to have 12 to 20 sets per week, for back, 12 to 20, for quads, 10 to 18, and etc. And in this column here, if we click on this chest volume cell, there is an arrow on the right hand side that if you click, will have a drop down menu so that you can select the number of sets you want for that muscle group. And obviously the higher the number of sets you do, the more likely is you're going to get growth in that muscle group. So you can customize this based on what muscle groups you want to emphasize more and what you want to emphasize less. So if we click this arrow, we see the drop down menu, which isn't visible on this recording, but it is essentially just a drop-down menu with numbers from 0 all the way up to 30, and you select the number of sets you want to input per week. And this is the same for all of the muscle groups, and it's recommended that you do something in the range of these recommended number of sets here. But it's up to you to what volumes you want to do for each muscle group. So now let's select some volumes for each muscle group. So we've now filled out the number of sets we want to do per muscle group. Let's now move on to the training program. So if we click on this tab that says training program, we get the template of the program that you will be following. So we can see that there is 5 weeks and the 5th week is a deload. So the first 4 weeks are going to be overloading training and the 5th week is going to be a deload to help you recover physically and mentally. And as we can see here, the number of sets for each exercise has already been filled out automatically based on the volumes we inputted on the previous tab. However, the rest of the program is not filled out. The reps we perform or the load we use has not been filled out. If we go back to the Start Here tab, the next step is to select the exercises we want to do for the training program. So going back to the training program, these exercises here are categories, and again there is a drop down menu if you click the arrow on the right hand side, and you can select the exercise you want for that category. So for horizontal press, there is a list of options here that we can select. Again, the drop down menu isn't visible for this video, but if we go onto this next tab that says exercises, we can see all the exercises for the categories. So we have horizontal press, lower body push, and the other categories, etc. If there is an exercise you want to employ that's not on this list of exercises we have, where it says other, you can actually type in your own exercise and that should show up on that drop-down menu. So if we write exercise 1, and then we go back to the training program, so for horizontal press, although you can't see, when we scroll to the bottom, exercise 1 is there. So let's now select exercises for each of the 4 days. So now we've filled out all the exercises for each of the 4 days. And although day 1 and 3 have the same categories of exercises, you can choose to choose different exercises on those days, or you can do the same exercises and change the reps and load you use. Same thing with day 2 and day 4. It's the same categories of exercises. However, you can select different exercises if you want, or keep the same exercises for both of those days and simply change the load and therefore the reps. So the next step is to understand the RPE system. So it's important to get a good grasp of what the RPE system is before starting this program. So if we go in this tab here that says Understanding RPE, we have some resources here to help you understand what it means. So the first is a table that essentially explains what the RPE system is, and also a link to a video here that will take you to a video which explains how to use RPE for hypertrophy training. So make sure, if you don't have a good idea of what RPE is, to have a look at these resources to get a good grasp on that. The next step is to complete the training program. So if we go back to the training program, we see here that the sets are already filled out automatically, and they stay the same for each of the weeks until week 5, which is reduced in number of sets. However, we don't know what load or reps to do. So essentially, it doesn't actually matter exactly what load and reps to do. It's up to you to customize what rep ranges you want to perform the exercises in. And that's going to be dictated by the load you use. So for example, for the barbell bench press on day 1, we may want to work in the 8 to 12 rep range, and that roughly corresponds to a load of about 70 kilos, for example. So we can see that the load here is now automatically filled out each week as the same load, and the progression is based on RPE. So the RPE over time for each of the exercises increases throughout the program until week 5, where we have a deload. So the highest RPEs will be in week 4 and the lowest will be in week 5. So essentially, we just need to pick a load, and we know we need to perform 3 sets. So we might perform the first set for 12 reps, the second set for 10 reps, and the third set we might get 9 reps at a 6 RPE. And then we need to basically do this and fill this out as we go for each exercise and for each session, how many reps were performed at the given RPE and what load was used. So the load should remain the same, but the number of reps changes based on the RPE used. If you have the same exercise, let's say on day 1 and on day 3, for example, we have dips on day 1 and dips on day 3 as well, it's probably a good idea to undulate the load used and therefore the reps performed. So on this day, we might want to use an additional 20 kilos for our dips, and therefore we might get 10 reps on the first set, 9 reps on the second, and 8 on the third. Whereas on day 3, we might just use body weight as a load, which means that the reps performed are probably going to be higher. So we might actually get 14 reps on the first set, 12 on the second, and 11 on the third. So we can change the rep ranges based on the loads that we use. And these loads are going to stay the same for this entire program, and the reps will change based on the RPE used. So after we've completed the program, we can then review and recycle the program, and essentially this template can be used on an ongoing basis. So in this tab here where we have long-term planning, it gives you some strategies to continually use this program in order to have endless training from it. So first is a table here that gives us an idea of what we need to change in the next 5 weeks. So the first question is, how difficult was the training program from 1 to 10? If the answer is 1 to 5 out of 10, then we might consider increasing the volumes in the next program for those muscle groups that felt easy. If the training program was about a 5 to 8 out of 10, it's probably a good ballpark of volumes that you're in. If the training program was a 9 or 10 out of 10 difficulty, then you probably might consider decreasing the volumes for those muscle groups that were really hard. We can then adjust the volume of the program for the next 5 weeks in order to suit our current situation. The other question is, were the reps performed below 6 for compound exercises or below 8 for isolation exercises on average? If the answer is yes to those for a certain exercise, then it's probably best to change that exercise or decrease the load of that exercise in the next program, because we're probably then no longer working in a good hypertrophy range. If they didn't fall below these rep ranges on average, then you can actually increase the load in the next program until you do fall below these reps. And here we also have some videos to help you periodize your training long term. So if you click on these links, you will be able to find these videos, and it should give you an idea of how to plan your training for the long term. And lastly, we have a tab here that gives you some links to the Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube pages for Flow High Performance, and also the Flow High Performance website where you can find more products.